guys, Miss P here. For the third part of your lesson, what I've done is I've actually taken the watercolor paper and I've taped it onto a tray so that you can tape it to your table if you want, or a nice flat piece of glass or a flat piece of masonite wood. I just had a tray laying around. I like, instead of putting it on the table, I like to be able to, if I want to tilt it, to run the paints, or if I want to set it to the side and work on something else. So a couple reasons for taping it. You tape it around the edge to keep it flat because paper does curl once it gets moist. The other thing is when you tape it around like this and you leave half the tape on the paper, what that'll do, that'll mask out the paper, and once you peel that tape off, you'll have like a nice white frame around your work. I've divided it into 4 sections because I wanted to demonstrate a couple different things on here. With the wet on wet technique, what I was showing you in the last video, or even the flat wash, sometimes it's beneficial to moisten the paper first before even attempting to put any paint on. And I want to point out that I have 2 jars of water here. One water is going to be for my fresh, clear water, and the other one is going to be to wash my brush out. And I always mess up, but you can always dump it out and put clear water in again. So I'm going to put my flat angled brush into the water, and I'm just going to simply coat this first square with water. We don't want it puddling. We want it glossy, but we don't want it like super puddling. So if it is, like if I see that in an area, I can dab my brush like I am here and kind of slurp some of that up and redistribute it. It's always important not to over scrub your painting, overwork it. The paper, watercolor paper is made to handle a lot of water, but if water and scrubbing, it'll kind of make it start crumbling, and you don't want that. So now that it's moist, I'm going to use the same brush, and I'm going to add, let's go with some yellow. Go with some happy yellow. Maybe even kind of like a yellow orange. So I'm gonna rinse my brush a little so I'm not contaminating my orange too much. Get some orange in there. Rinse off my brush again. Maybe get a little more of that yellow. So we have like a nice yellow orange. And while it's damp, I can lay this color on like this. And then as I'm going up the page, you can see that it's getting a lot lighter. That's because the moisture in the paper is helping dilute the color. So again, if I start with kind of a stronger color in the center, like this, and then I just kind of start working my way down, you get kind of like that ombre effect, right? And that can work really well, again, for, I always say skies, but it would make a beautiful sky. I'm finding that it's a little too light there, so I can just add a little bit more paint. And while it's wet, because we're learning the wet on wet technique, I'll rinse my brush, get some fresh water. I might add a little bit of violet. A little bit of violet I'm mixing in my palette right now. It's pre-mixed. I'm gonna rinse my brush off. It stains the brush, but there is no longer pigment on the brush, or maybe a tad bit. You can always test it out on your paper towel. I might add a little bit of red to that violet. See if we can get a nice red violet. That's pretty. I'm going to drag that maybe even in the corners. And see that wet on wet technique, it's still like blending a lot, right? So I can kind of put a little bit over here, a little bit over here. I think I might even switch brushes at this point and use my round brush. And then I can take water and just kind of pull that up. And I'm a very light touch in my brush. I just want you to know I'm not scrubbing the paper at all. A little bit more water. Because it's wet on wet, it's still kind of floating on top. We can manipulate it a little bit. Remember, if you find that you have a little bit too much water there and you feel like it's kind of getting out of control, you can always put your brush on the paper towel and get some of that moisture off, and then you can slurp it up and blend it maybe even a little bit better. Maybe that purple was a little too much. I can kind of just take some of that away. It doesn't matter if you get the paint on the tape at all. tape will be pulled off. You'll have a lovely frame around your picture. Like that. Maybe I'll add a little more up the side here. And a little in this corner. Like that. Again, while it's wet, I might add a little bit of, I'm just making this up, I'm not looking at a picture. I'm just kind of playing around. Maybe a little bit of red blending into the purple then. So that's wet on wet. You could leave it like that, but I just rinsed my brush. Just kind of blend that a little bit. Like that. And then you would let that dry before you wanted to do the dry on wet technique, which is what I'm going to show you next. So this is now dry. I put on my graded wash, kind of a graded variegated wash over here, and we can kind of turn this into a picture. I am looking at something on the internet. I'm not going to copy it exactly, but I've used some purples and oranges, so we're just going to try like a monochromatic, real simple painting. So I'm going to use oranges, yellows, red violets, things like that. Okay, so I'll probably be using this part right here, the orange, the red, the orange, the yellow. Might sneak in some violets there to make some red violet. I'm going to continue to be a little loose and transparent and build up the painting. So I think I'm going to mix a little bit of a red orange with a hint of violet. And as I'm doing this, I'm realizing I think I want to wet this whole area right here, because I want a lot of bleeding and wet on wet techniques to occur right here. So I'm going to pre-moisten that area before I do anything. Then I'm going to grab some color, a little bit of the purple, not too dark, and basically I'm going for kind of a water scene with some trees off in the distance. And you can see I'm just pushing around the paint right now. I don't want it dark. I know this doesn't look like trees right now at all, but we're working kind of back to front with that atmospheric perspective where the trees are so far away that they're so blurry. Okay, then I might even add some more just darker tones on this side here. Now that it's wet, I could go a little bit less transparent, meaning a little less water, while it's still wet, doing a wet on wet, mixing up some red violets, and again, dropping that on there. We'll get a little bit more texture. And then I have to leave it. I know that you guys are like, what? I want to continue working on it. Well, you have to wait. So we'll let that sit for a little bit, and then maybe we'll do something with this one here. Now we can kind of do the same thing. It's monochromatic. We'll work with the cooler colors, or the violets and blues, and we can kind of do the same thing here. We can add, what should we do? We should maybe add a kind of a island in the middle here. Again, it doesn't quite look like anything right now. And then I think I'm going to eventually have some trees coming up here. I'm not going to get too detailed right now. I'm just kind of trying to place things. Looking at another little picture here on the internet. Although, I'm not happy with the sky. I think the sky's too plain. So watch this lifting technique as Miss P changes her mind right in front of you. Just going to kind of lift that out of there. And I don't even care if some of this island bleeds into the sky, because I just think it needs a little bit more variation. I'm going to kind of add some more blues back here. Add some blues here, let that bleed. Like the island's reflecting into the water. Some brighter blue clouds, letting that paint kind of flow. Maybe I want some lighter areas. Let's see if I can lift some of this. I'm gonna put some of this water here. I'm not scrubbing too hard or you will scrub that first layer of the paper off and you don't want that. I'm gonna take some clean paper towel. Just kind of lift that. That's good, we got like a nice lighter tone there, I like that. I know you're looking at it going, it's a blob, Miss P. I know, it's okay. I like kind of the variation there. Now again, we're probably gonna have to let this sit. So I'll be back in just a few minutes. Oh, I'm liking that. See you in like 5 minutes. So it's all nice and dry now. So I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use some of those techniques I taught you. I'm gonna use some wet on wet, some wet on dry, and I'm gonna build up the painting and do it in fast time for you. Okay, so the paintings are dry now. I think this one turned out fairly well. I could probably go in and rework a little wet on dry and get some more detail here. These trees, not good. I didn't use a small enough brush, so I'm not too pleased with them. But again, this is just a quick video to get you inspired. So we're gonna do the big reveal now. This is the most satisfying part. It's when you actually take off the tape. So sometimes the tape will stick to the paper, so make sure, oh, I should have done this one first because it's overlapping. Make sure it doesn't tear your paper. If it does, do it really slow. You're gonna find sometimes you'll have some bleeding underneath the tape. Here the tape is actually sticking to the paper. Big reveal there.